The Game.
Well, the game isn't quite over just yet, although it's very, very close to being over. Welcome into overtime here on 95.7 The Game. We got a little less than 2 minutes to go down in Santa Clara. But because the results of this game does not matter all that much, we figured we might as well hop on, talk you through the final couple of minutes, and then we'll, of course, bring you everything you need to know about what happened in the 49ers' second preseason game of the year. Currently, they're up by 6 over the New Orleans Saints. You've got third stringers, you got fourth stringers, you got guys hoping to just make the roster on the field right now. But there's plenty to be excited about, plenty to be a little bit frustrated by as well for the 49ers as they open up their home slate in 2024. But welcome into overtime. It's Mark Randy with you alongside Sterling Bennett for a second consecutive preseason week. Sterling, good evening. Hope you had a good weekend, and it'll be a little bit better if the Niners just close it out and get the W today.
Preseason wins matter here, Mark. They matter. I will tell you this. My week was not good. I was out there doing yard work, mowing the lawn. I got myself a case of the sun poisoning. I was in bed all week. But I'll tell you what, watching that red and gold on that field back in Santa Clara at Levi Stadium for the first time since the NFC Championship game got me pumped up. Seeing Brock Purdy out there got me pumped up, Mark. What are we, 3 weeks away from week 1 against the Jets? I'm ready. Get me some actual football because the Niners, they're my life.
Yeah, 22 days away from Niners regular season football. 3 weeks from tomorrow, it's Monday Night Football against Aaron Rodgers and the New York Jets. That's coming up, again, a little more than 3 weeks, and we'll, of course, have it for you. Another edition of Overtime on 95.7 The Game come week number 1 on Monday evening. And we can now tell you that the 49ers have forced a turnover on downs in Santa Clara, inside of Levi Stadium. The Saints have a couple of timeouts. They'll probably use them and try to, maybe they won't use them and they'll just wave the white flag on this overtime game because despite what you said, Sterling, I'm not so sure the Saints and the Niners really care all that much about wins and losses in the preseason, but it does seem like the Niners will get out of this one with a preseason win. They'll improve to 1-1 in the 2024 preseason. And while maybe you do care about wins and losses in the preseason, Sterling, I know
Back
you will.
Back to 500, baby. Back to 500.
I know you will agree that while wins and losses matter, what matters more is performances of individual players, and there's a number of players that we can point to, and we'll get into it all here over the next 2 hours on Overtime, and you can join us, shoot us a text, give us a call, 888-957-9570. For starters, Sterling, we saw the first edition of Brock Purdy in 2024. He played the entire first quarter, which I don't know how you felt, was a little bit more than I was expecting. Maybe I was expecting like 10 plays. He played 11, but maybe you were hoping that those 10 plays would come on one drive or at worst 2 drives, but he got 11 plays in over 3 drives because the offense did nothing with him on the field. 11 plays, 12 yards, but the Niners played 4 quarterbacks. Each one played 1 full quarter, including Brock Purdy. It wasn't the best Brock Purdy has ever looked, that's for sure, but he's also playing with very few other starters around him on the offensive side of the football, Sterling, and going up against, for the most part, New Orleans' number 1 team. Brock Purdy, not great, but we're not going to make a big deal of it because it is just preseason football and his first few drives of 2024.
It definitely wasn't pretty. It was honestly really bad. Again, to be fair, no Christian McCaffrey, no Kyle Juszczyk, no Debo, no Ayuk, no Kittle, no Trent, no Aaron Banks. And I could care less about the incompletions. I can care less about maybe some miscommunication or him trying to force a throw downfield. What I cared about was him taking hit after hit behind a bad offensive line play. And I get it. Kyle wants to get his guys out there, loosen them up. But it's like, okay, maybe 1 drive, maybe 2. But after he takes the first hit, it's like, okay, I'm calling 3 runs, and then we're going to punt, and then it's going to be over with. Like, you cannot afford to lose Brock Purdy. But then again, Joshua Dobbs was out there balling tonight, looking like quarterback 2 easily on the depth chart. But for the starter's sake, get back to work because it was not very good.
Yeah, the biggest concern is Brock Purdy taking a couple of hits, and I think if you ask a football player, about that. And I'm sure you asked Brock about it, and maybe he will be post-game if he's made available tonight. I'm not so sure if he will be. But whenever he is asked about today's game, I'm sure he will be asked about the hits. And I can guarantee you what he's going to say is, well, I need those hits because I'm going to get hit in the regular season, and you kind of need to get that feeling back. I mean, you spend the entire training camp, you spend the vast majority of the preseason, aside from maybe a few drives that you play in preseason games, where you're wearing a different color jersey than everybody else, and you cannot get hit. If someone lays a fingertip on you, they get yelled at by the coaching staff and get yanked off the field. Like, you do kind of need to get introduced to that kind of football again, to real football, where you can get hit. But everything that you're saying is also 100% true, Sterling, because the disaster scenario for the 49ers is you lose Brock Purdy in a meaningless game in the preseason, and then suddenly your season, which was looking so bright and still is, but if there was, God forbid, something happened to Brock Purdy in the preseason, you know, you could be excited about Josh Dobbs and the way that he looked, but let's not pretend that he's going to be as good as Brock Purdy. He was an MVP finalist a season ago. That is the disaster scenario. So if you're looking for a positive out of Brock Purdy and what was a relatively uneven performance through 3 drives, 11 plays, 12 yards, it was, Sterling, that he did not get hurt, and he escapes preseason week 2 totally healthy.
There was a play after he was returning from the UCL surgery where Clelin Ferrell came around the outside during practice and smacked the ball out of his hand.
I remember that.
And everybody was like, oh my goodness, Brock, are you okay? And he was like, guys, I'm fine. Relax.
Clelin Ferrell needs to get cut right now.
Which, good luck in Washington, Clelin, but still. So I'm... To your point, I'm sure Brock was like, do I want to get hit in the preseason? No, but I'll take my lumps now to get myself ready. It's almost like when you don't get hit for a long time, that first hit kind of wakes you up like, okay, here we go. And it gets you ready for week 1 of the NFL season. But I don't know, like, I don't know if I agree with Shanahan sticking with him for so long. Yeah. I think Kyle said maybe 1 to 2 drives, and he plays 3, and maybe you want to see something specific out of him, but after that second drive where he kind of gives up on the scramble and was like, yeah, whatever, this doesn't matter to me. It's like, okay, he's checked out, Kyle. Like, let's go to the backups. And I don't know, it was just like a weird thing with Kyle. Like, again, when you don't have Christian, don't have Debo or Juwan Jennings and Juszczyk and Kittle, it's like, if those guys aren't playing, why is your franchise quarterback, the most important position on the field, playing out there with backup left tackles and backup centers and backup right tackles? Like, that's not the person you want to put out there without some bubble wrap on. And Purdy was taking his lumps, and it's like, I can't help but like cringe and like, oh my goodness, like 1 hit is all it takes and the season's over. Get him out of there, Kyle. Yeah,
the one moment where I was scared, and if you were worried about Brock Purdy, after taking these hits, 3 drives didn't look good, give us a call, shoot us a text, 888-957-9570. It's Mark Randy Sterling Bennett with you here on Overtime on 95.7 The Game. The one play where I was legitimately scared for a second, Sterling, it was the second drive where Kyle Shanahan calls play action boot, a naked boot, which essentially means Brock Purdy fakes the handoff. His back is to the side of the field where he's going to turn and run to. So if there's a free edge rusher, a free blitzer coming from that side of the field, Brock Purdy is going to spin and run right into it, and he has no ability to do anything about it. It's a dangerous, dangerous play if you don't block it up and scheme it up correctly. The Niners, guess what? They didn't block it up and they didn't scheme it up correctly. There was a free rusher on him. Now, Purdy, and I think an area of his game that's actually very underrated is his ability to kind of make defenders like that miss, and he did, and he extended the play and then ran all the way back over to the right. I think that was the play where he ultimately just kind of gave himself up and ran out of bounds. But that was the moment when you saw the naked boot, and you see the free rusher coming from his backside, and you're, oh my God, he's going to get lit up here. He's not going to see it. He's going to fumble the ball. He might get hurt, but he avoided the hit, and that was the worst of it there. But yeah, I was worried in that moment. I think he took 3 total hits in his 3 drives. Nothing terribly vicious. One of them was just more of a push than a hit. But yeah, you want to avoid that as much as you can. and he didn't look terribly good offensively in those other drives as well. But you look at some of the other quarterback plays, Sterling, and Josh Dobbs, I mean, he was kind of balling out. I mean, he had a really nice moment to end the first half. He used his legs over and over and over again. Maybe you think he uses his legs a little bit too much. It's kind of what you get with Josh Dobbs. But he had some nice moments, and after playing the second half last week, being the second quarterback off the bench, and meaningfully playing behind Brandon Allen, he played ahead of Brandon Allen this week and looked pretty darn good. And maybe he's got a leg up now on that QB2 spot because, of course, despite Purdy's struggles, if we want to call it that, through the first quarter, there's no quarterback controversy here. But Josh Dobbs looking pretty good, and he might be settling into a QB2 role with the 49ers.
And let's clarify for Jason on the YouTube chat. No one's talking about Purdy in a negative way. It's simply just, don't take hits. Please, stay on the field, be healthy.
Please,
and
yes.
No one cares if Brock Purdy struggles. He was almost the MVP last year. He's going to be fine. They're going to be good, and he'll be great again. But Joshua Dobbs tonight was, I think, the player of the game. There's, of course, other players like Jacob Cowing, and if you want to go on the defensive side, Renardo Green had a really nice game. But Joshua Dobbs was not just the pastronaut. He was leading this offense to new planets and new heights out there with backup receivers and running backs. He was awesome. 12 for 21, 133 yards, his second rushing touchdown of the preseason. He's showing things that Brandon Allen just can't do unless he's pump faking guys out of their shoes in the second half. But Joshua Dobbs was, I don't want to say he put the nail in the coffin to the quarterback 2 job in Brandon Allen's case, but Joshua Dobbs has just been, I wouldn't say surprising. It's just been like, if we can have that as a backup, in case Brock goes down 1 game, 2 games, we can survive a Brock Purdy-less week or 2. If Joshua Dobbs is leading the way, he was really solid for back-to-back weeks.
Yeah, he was good. I mean, his numbers, he finishes playing 1 quarter. He played the second quarter, and it was the Niners' best quarter offensively. 12 for 21. The fact that he threw the ball 21 times in a single quarter, kind of crazy. 21 pass attempts. He completed 12 of them for 133 yards. Did not throw for a touchdown. Did not throw an interception. Did run for that touchdown on 4th and 1 on the final play, I guess the second to last play of the second quarter. He scored with 1 second left. 3 rushes for 25 yards and that 1 touchdown. And the offense as a whole in that second quarter with Dobbs leading the way, 28 plays, 173 yards. That's about 6 yards per play for the 49ers, led by Josh Dobbs. Compare that, Sterling, with what Brock Purdy did in his quarter, in his 3 drives. Purdy 2 for 6, 11 yards, and the offense in those 3 drives, 12 yards, 11 plays. Josh Dobbs had a much better day than Brock Purdy, Sterling. We're talking about a QB controversy on our hands, right?
I can't wait to see Nick Wright tomorrow morning on Fox Sports being like, look, Brock Purdy's training camp interceptions and Joshua Dobbs out there with the legs looking like, I don't know, Roger Craig out there scoring touchdowns. You better watch out in San Francisco. But no, Joshua Dobbs. And the thing about Dobbs is he's a big guy. He's massive, and he moves so fluidly.
He's athletic, yeah.
He's unafraid to take his hits, and with him, he just brings something else to that quarterback room. And while, yes, Brock is a whole different beast, Brandon Allen's much more of your prototypical backup quarterback. He'll stay within the scheme of the offense that Shanahan calls, whereas Joshua Dobbs is much more of a, if things get off schedule, if I have to make my own magic here, I can do that. And I'm hoping that Kyle Shanahan is leaning towards Joshua Dobbs. This guy beat the Dallas Cowboys last year with the Cardinals. I would like to think he can beat a better team than the Cowboys, or at least the Cowboys again, if he has to play with the San Francisco 49ers offense. But he's big, he's strong, he's fast, and the way he extends plays, he's looking to throw. Yes, he'll run. Yes, he'll go for the touchdown. Yes, he'll get 5 extra yards here or there. But when he runs, he's looking to make the better throw downfield. And also, he's taking deep shots. Jacob Cowing, 38 yards, almost touchdown pass. Like, Joshua Dobbs is doing things that Brandon Allen's not doing. And he looks way more comfortable despite being in the offense for, 1/8 of the time than Brandon Allen. Yeah. Allen had all last year. Joshua Dobbs looks head and shoulders above him.
Yeah. No, he does. A couple of things. I still have the KTVU Channel 2 on here in the studio where the game was on earlier, and they're going through, their post-game show, and they have their lower third, what they're discussing, and they say Brock Purdy struggles. Brock Purdy struggles is what KTVU says, and I just got a push notification from the ESPN app. The ESPN app says Josh Dobbs sends 49ers fans into a frenzy with a sweet broken tackle for a score. Which headline, Sterling, is more fair? Brock Purdy struggles or Josh Dobbs sends Niner fans into a frenzy? Because both seem a little bit aggressive to me.
Oh, I was definitely in a frenzy on my couch trying to hold my sunburnt back like, yes, don't, God. But like,
please,
yes, Dobbs.
It was a 4th and 1 read option. Come on.
Hey, first off, when is Kyle Shanahan ever calling 4th down read options with 1 second left before halftime? It's a brand new Kyle. He's challenging plays left and right now. One last week, one today.
The challenge. What are you doing? First of all, that was so clearly the wrong decision. Why did he made a challenge in the first quarter of a preseason game that he had no chance of getting overturned. What is he doing? And it's Shanahan a preseason game.
He said, I'm a new man. We're trying new things. We're going from the opening kickoff to the sound of the final buzzer. We're challenging plays in the first. We're doing second half read options with 1 second left on the clock. We're going for it all. And which is so funny because he'll never do that in the regular season. Never. He'll never call that again. It'll be, all right, come on, Jake, get out there. Or he'll give it to Christian McCaffrey. And I can almost predict this. The odds Kyle Shanahan goes for it on 4th down with 1 second left before halftime is like 0.1%. He wants the guaranteed points 99% of the time, even with a better quarterback and running back and 2 all-pro receivers and an all-pro tight end. He'll take those 3 points gladly.
The only time I can remember him doing not what you're talking about and actually going for it was, what season was this? This would have been the 2021 season when Jimmy Garoppolo was still the starter, but it was Trey Lance's rookie season when they were 1-1, I think, into week 3, Sunday night game against the Packers.
Green Bay? Yeah,
and it was the end of the first half, and the offense was terrible. I don't think they had even scored up to that point. Maybe they had 3 points. Certainly hadn't scored a touchdown yet. The offense was stuck in the mud all first half. And I don't know if it was 4th and 1. It might have been 4th and goal from like the 2 or the 3, but they had time for one final play. It was either kick the field goal or go for it on 4th down. It might not have even been 4th down, but essentially it was because there was only time for one play. And he brings in Trey Lance. He brings in Trey Lance and takes out Jimmy Garoppolo for that one play, and Trey Lance just runs left, blocked in front of him by Trent Williams. They get the touchdown. That's the only other time I can remember Kyle Shanahan going forward in a moment like that. But you're right. It seems unlikely that if it was a regular season game, he would have made that decision. I thought it was also funny because the Fox crew, the Fox broadcast, Adam Amin and Mark Sanchez. Mark Sanchez, by the way, growing out the hair. He's got the flow randomly now. It doesn't look great, Mark. But the Fox crew was like, you got plenty of time to kick the field goal. But it's 4th and 1 in a preseason game at the end of the first half. This is just situational football. Go for it. But it is kind of what frustrates me about Kyle Shanahan. And I think where he is at par or under par, like in every single category of play calling and decision making, I think as a head coach in the NFL, across the board when compared to most other head coaches. And when I say at par or better than par, like he's ahead of the game. Like he generally is better than everybody else. He's really good. But the one time where he's consistently bogeying and double bogeying and triple bogeying is his aggressiveness on 4th downs. Sometimes it comes back to bite you. Dan Campbell, NFC Championship game on line 1, but it's where the NFL is going. I'm at a situation, Sterling, especially when you have like Christian McCaffrey and Deebo Samuel and George Kittle. If it's 4th and 3 or less, I almost want my team to go for it every single time. That's how confident I am in my skill position guys being able to gain me 3, 2, or 1 yards. Shanahan hasn't really been that aggressive, and I know I'm picking at hairs here. I know it's a preseason game, and he actually did it today. But I think you're right. The only reason that he did it today was because it was a preseason game and the stakes really didn't matter. Generally, when the stakes matter, he tends to play it safe, play it conservative, take the 3 points, as opposed to maybe trying to put the nail in the coffin and win the game earlier than late in the fourth quarter. So that's one area where, if I'm a little frustrated by Shanahan as a whole, this isn't a today reaction, but as a whole, it's aggressiveness on fourth downs.
Well, funny enough, that touchdown is the difference in the game. If they don't score the touchdown, the game is 9-10 and they lose. But
they could have kicked the field goal and it would have been 12-10.
Right.
But.
Right. But I hope Kyle, for whatever it's worth, even if it is the preseason, part of me is like, look at what Dan Campbell did. Yeah, it kind of came back to bite him in the butt, but whatever. If Josh Reynolds doesn't drop 2 passes, you're not even playing the Chiefs at all in February. So part of me hopes that he takes his preseason risks over into the regular season. What do you have to lose? You might as well try it against the Jets week 1 and do it against whoever you are in the playoffs if you make it that far. If you want, I've always said this, and it's been a long time comment. You got to risk it to get the biscuit, brother. I want biscuits, man. I want the Texas Roadhouse biscuits, please. They're delicious. Give me those. So take some more risks, and hopefully we can get in the end zone more and win some more games. But you brought up Trent Williams earlier. Does Jalen Moore just bother you so much to a point of you never, ever, ever want to see him out there? He was terrible tonight. And if we have to watch him, if the Niners don't get the Trent Williams situation taken care of in the next couple of weeks, he's not there week 1, I am mortified for Brock Purdy. Mortified.
Yeah, if Jalen Moore is taking meaningful snaps this year, and especially if it's not because of injury, if it's because of contracts, the Niners have a disaster on their hands. It's one thing if it's injuries, and those are unavoidable, and maybe you blame, so many people blamed Kyle Shanahan for Trey Lance's injuries, kind of the lunatic fringe in my opinion. But if it is injury related, okay, it's fine, whatever. Maybe you could be upset that there wasn't a little bit more resources and energy and time spent addressing offensive line in general, and that's fair. But if it's injury related, okay, what are you going to do? But if it is, you're right, contractually related absence from Trent Williams or really any other offensive lineman, not that there's any other offensive lineman contract situation that's going to cause them to miss time. But if Trent Williams misses or regular season games, Sterling, because of his contract issue, and you have Jalen Moore playing left tackle, it's going to be rough. It's going to be rough. The Niners very well could still win and beat the Jets potentially because they have so many good players elsewhere and whatever, but you're running a major, major risk because you're right. Jalen Moore, he struggled today. And later on, we'll go through stock up, stock down, winners from preseason week number 2, losers from preseason week number 2, who took a step towards winning a roster spot, who maybe lost a roster spot. We'll go through all of that. Sterling, I can imagine Jalen Moore might be near the top of your list in terms of players who he's going to make the roster because they just don't have a lot of other offensive linemen. But in terms of your confidence level in them delivering if they get snaps, I imagine Jalen Moore took a step back in that regard today.
Jalen Moore is what Madden thinks left tackles play like, where they just stand there and they don't move and they let the edge rusher go right by them. And you're like, what just happened? Why was there no blocking? How did the edge rusher get right by you? There was a play in this game where Jalen Moore, the ball is hiked and he's backing up. He's trying to get in position and the guy runs right around him. And it's like, Jalen Moore, how are you an NFL left tackle allowing edge rushers, mainly backups, mind you, to run right around you to get to your quarterback? I get there's nobody else. The Niners don't want to retain Brandon Parker or Chris Hubbard. Those are swing tackle, right tackle players, and we're comfortable there. Jalen Moore is all you got at left tackle behind Trent Williams. And I'm not going to say it's just this void of nothingness there, and he's played much better than this in the past. But this is his preseason debut. He didn't play last week because he was sick.
Yep.
This was his first real snaps of preseason. You hope maybe next week it's better, but from what we've seen so far, it's ugly. It's ugly. It is the ugly duckling of the offensive line that has Jake Brendel and Aaron Banks and Dominic Puni and Jarrett Kingston a 7th or 6th round picks out there playing better than Jalen Moore, who's been here for like 3 or 4 years. Trent Williams, they got to get this thing taken care of. They have to.
And I think what we've seen from Jalen Moore, if the Niners were maybe a little hesitant to bend to Trent Williams' wishes, Jalen Moore's performance today maybe makes them a little more willing to do that. Like, if we're talking about a winner from today, it might be Trent Williams, just because the Niners know, they already knew, but they have confirmation that they do not have anywhere near a solution behind Trent Williams if he were to miss time. So Trent Williams, maybe he's a winner from today. All right, let's go out to the phone lines here on Overtime on 95.7 The Game. It's Mark Randy and Sterling Bennett with you. You can give us a call, shoot us a text, join us on the YouTube chat powered by First NorCal Credit Union, 888-957-9570. Up first is Oliver. Oliver's out in Philly. Oliver, I hope you're a Niner fan standing tall out there in Philadelphia. You're on Overtime here on 95.7 The Game. How you doing, Oliver?
I'm doing great. How are you doing?
We're doing all right. What'd you think of Brock Purdy and company tonight?
Well, first of all, I'm an NFL fan. I am certainly not a Niner fan. I apologize. You mentioned I'm from Philadelphia. I'm an Eagles fan, EAGLES. Eagles, you know what I mean? And that's okay. We'll talk about the Niners for a minute because, no one in San Francisco is interested in probably the Eagles. So what my take was from Brock Purdy tonight, and what my take kind of was in the last couple of years in talking about Brock Purdy, is they got to give him more opportunities. I do believe that. I do think Kyle Shanahan and his offense, they need to put more, not less, more on Brock Purdy. And they need to give the offense to Brock Purdy. They need to open it up. They need to get him slinging the football down the field, screen passes, middle passes, whatever it may be, to get this offensive flowing. Because we all know Brock Purdy can sling the football. We all know Brock Purdy can move. We all can see the development in Brock Purdy. So my question to you would be, how do we get Brock Purdy, whether it be from a 49ers fan, an Eagles fan, an NFL fan standpoint, how do we get Brock Purdy to the next level?
Appreciate the call, Oliver, and we can get into that on the other side. I mean, it's an interesting question. I think the 49ers, as an offense, I think maybe we think of this a little bit more from a skill position, a wide receiver, tight end, and a running back viewpoint. We think of it as an offense that spreads the wealth around, and no one is going to be the featured guy every single week because you have so many mouths to feed. I'm not so sure that Purdy needs more opportunity, but he also doesn't need to do maybe as much as other quarterbacks around the league need to do, like, say, a Josh Allen, because he's got Brock Purdy does so many weapons around him. But we can get into that coming up on the other side. We got plenty more to get into. I know Sterling is upset by a particular offensive lineman, Jalen Moore. I think he's thrilled because I am. And if I'm thrilled by offensive line play, Sterling is probably overjoyed, and that's rookie Dominic Puni. We can get into him coming up on the other side as well. We got plenty more to dive into. We're with you until 10 o'clock tonight here on Overtime on 95.7 The Game. We welcome your calls, your texts, 888-957-9570. More coming up next. It's Overtime here on 95.7 The Game.
Uncle, Kate's gonna leave me, and I need your advice.
What's the problem, John?
She thinks I'm cheating on her, but I'm not. It's just that I have ED now, and I don't know why.
Don't worry. The same thing happened.
Little read. Dobbs the QB stay on his feet and somersaults home for the touchdown over Jordan Howden. Not the cleanest takeoff for the Pasternak, but just enough to get past the goal line.
Now back to Overtime with Sterling Bennett and Mark Grandy on 95.7 The Game.
That was Adam Amin on Fox calling Josh Dobbs' 1-yard touchdown run to close the first half. It was a read option, faked the handoff, kept it himself, broke one weak tackle, used his offhand to keep him on balance, stay on his feet, and he dove into the end zone to give the Niners a lead there to close the first half. A big moment there for the 49ers on offense, and as Sterling pointed out earlier, maybe the reason why they ended up winning the football game was that play right there. Ultimately, wins and losses in the preseason, despite what Sterling says, do not matter all that much. They don't matter that much, but that was a fun moment.
It builds character.
It does. And I mean, obviously, you would like to win as opposed to lose, but no one is going to lose any sleep over a loss in the preseason. But builds good habits. You never know. You get used to the feeling of winning, and it could help you out in the regular season. But listening to that highlight and watching Josh Dobbs today, Sterling, I think we can both agree that he took a step towards winning the QB2 battle. Maybe he had already taken a step prior to today because he played ahead of Brandon Allen. Maybe this was the plan by Kyle Shanahan all along because Allen played ahead of Dobbs last week, and he wanted to make sure both players got an opportunity to play ahead of the other through 2 games. But he took another step forward into that potential role tonight. But I got a question for you and for all of our listeners out there, 888-957-9570. What exactly do you want out of your backup quarterback? Because it's not always necessarily potentially, I don't know, the player who you think can go out there and score you the most points. Maybe you try to be a little bit more safe. You want to avoid the disaster plays. You want to avoid the turnovers. And someone who's maybe a little bit more, I don't know if boring is the right word, but the prototypical quarterback, maybe someone who's a little less likely to turn the ball over, a little less likely to take some sacks, a little less likely to have some wild plays. And while you look at Josh Dobbs, Sterling, and everything that he's done positively, it's fun, it's exciting, it's different. He's nothing like Brandon Allen, who's a prototypical pocket passer, which at times can be a good thing, at times can be a bad thing. But you're probably more likely to get some peaks and valleys with Josh Dobbs than you are with Brandon Allen. You're probably going to get at his best better than Brandon Allen, but at his worst, you're probably going to see some head-scratching plays, some turnovers, some fumbles, some plays where he's trying to extend with his legs and he gets sacked, he loses the ball, or whatever the case is. I'm not saying Brandon Allen is a better quarterback and that he should be QB2, but I'm just saying the QB2 question isn't always about who's been playing the best. Sometimes it's about the style of the quarterback, and Brandon Allen's safeness, which again, I don't mean entirely as a compliment. Sometimes that is what someone like Kyle Shanahan might prefer out of his QB2 because he wants to avoid the back-breaking plays if you are in a situation where you have to go to your backup quarterback, and maybe that's a little bit more up Brandon Allen's alley. But there's no debating that Josh Dobbs has been more impressive so far through 2 preseason games.
I would take your question and flip it and say, what does a backup quarterback actually do? They usually come in when a quarterback gets injured. That usually happens in the middle of a game, not during the middle of the week. True. If you are Kyle Shanahan, you probably want a quarterback that can come in and just run the offense you want them to run. Now, it depends on the situation. Are you trying to win a game? Trying to survive a game, right? I think Brandon Allen is a quarterback that could come in the middle of a game if Brock Purdy gets hurt and keep you going a little bit. Not going to be a game changer, not going to be a playmaker, but he'll keep you there, either keep you close or keep you just ahead. He'll give it to CMC. He'll feed Debo in the backfield. I hate to say this, but like a lesser Jimmy Garoppolo. Just game manage me. Game manage me to victory, right? Whereas Joshua Dobbs is more of that quarterback you want to bring in before the week starts, let him get all the reps leading into Sunday or Monday, and then let him play. I think if Brock Purdy, by any chance, hope it doesn't happen, gets hurt, I would want to play Brandon Allen. He'll come in, do exactly what Kyle wants him to do. He'll be that vanilla quarterback and run the scheme how Kyle says. He's not going to complain. He's not going to play hero ball and just do whatever Shanahan wants. Whereas if Brock is out for an elongated period of time, that's where I'm looking at Joshua Dobbs. Okay, you are going to be a playmaker. We can scheme around you. We can scheme to your strengths and scheme against your weaknesses. We can also figure out how to utilize your legs, whereas Brandon Allen's going to be kind of a stick in the mud in the pocket. Now, within that, Joshua Dobbs today did bail from a clean pocket and almost got sacked. He spun right into a edge rusher, and it was like, whoa, what are you doing, buddy? But
he got out of it. I mean, he's athletic enough.
You're right, he is, and he's big enough to take a hit and keep going. But I think that Joshua Dobbs, I think he deserves to be quarterback too. He has, fully guaranteed contract, given the most money, but I think Shanahan feels safer playing Brandon Allen. Don't forget, for what it's worth, and it may be worth nothing, Shanahan felt comfortable enough trading Trey Lance for a 4th-round pick to keep Brandon Allen. I think that, while he's not going to trade Joshua Dobbs, goes into his comfortability with him, even in this quarterback competition this year.
Yeah. Yeah, no doubt. Josh Dobbs today, 12 for 21, 133 yards, no touchdowns, no turnovers, did rush for 1 touchdown, though. It was the highlight you just heard coming into this segment, courtesy of Fox, Adam Amin on the call. Brandon Allen, 7 for 10, 36 yards, so it was a lot of dink and dunk, not much from Brandon Allen deeper down the field. No touchdowns, no interceptions. The offense with Brandon Allen, 13 plays, 69 yards, a little more than 5 yards per play. Josh Dobbs, offense, 28 plays, 173 yards, so a little more than 6 yards per play. So the offense more efficient by about a full yard more per play with Josh Dobbs, and he was a little bit more impressive spreading the ball around and throwing more than just checkdowns and simple crossing patterns and slants and drag routes. I mean, the prettiest throw of the night, actually one of them was by Brandon Allen. It was just off the fingertips of Ronnie Bell than the left sideline. That was a nice moment in this game. Unfortunately, it goes down as an incompletion for Brandon Allen. But the prettiest completion of the day for Niners quarterback, Sterling, no doubt it was Josh Dobbs late in the first half down the right sideline to Jacob Cowing for a really, really nice gain. Jacob Cowing, the 4th-round pick out of Arizona, did not play last week against the Titans, and he was one of the major winners of today. He goes 4 catches for 51 yards, that 38-yard completion down the right sideline that set up the touchdown at the end of the first half. That was a beautiful throw by Josh Dobbs. It was a great catch by Jacob Cowing, and Sterling, it was just one of many nice moments for Jacob Cowing tonight. I'm sure you agree with me in this. It was nice to see a rookie receiver out there because neither Cowing or Pearsall played week 1 of the preseason. Pearsall did not play again tonight, dealing with another injury, and that's unfortunate. We can talk about that a little bit more later, but at least we got to see Jacob Cowing, and we saw his speed on display really all night long. You see the ways in which he can be used deeper down the field on crossing patterns, kind of in some gadget plays. He had one end around. He is a guy that Shanahan can utilize in a number of different ways, and we got our first taste of that tonight. Jacob Cowing was very, very nice. He had a very good game.
Other than Dominic Puni, the defense in the 2024 draft class has kind of taken the spotlight.
Yep.
Whether it's Malik Mustafa, Renardo Green, Tatum Bethune, they have been everyone's talking points, whether it's in the bar or at work the next day. Did you see that guy? Where now it's the offense's turn, and according to Kyle Shanahan, we're going to get back Pearsall hopefully this week. He's day-to-day, and Isaac Rendo should be back this week too. So
that's big.
We are going to start seeing the offensive side of that 2024 draft class, and hopefully see the playmakers we brought in this year. And again, you hope the IE situation's over with, and you hope the Trent Williams things take care of itself. But Cowing, despite being 5'9", he's a playmaker. He can do the things that Debo does, although not to Debo's level, but end arounds, kick returns, he'll fight through contact, he'll go deep downfield, and ultimately, I get you have Juwan Jennings and you have Debo here for the next 2 seasons, and you have Pearsall. Cowing, he might see the ball a little more than Pearsall will. He's going to be likely on kick returns and punt returns this year, whereas Pearsall will probably be that fourth receiver. Cowing does have an opportunity to make a splash, likely earlier than Pearsall does, even despite the health injury or the health issues that Pearsall has. And Cowing's just go back to his play at Arizona. A 5-year player. He's a pro. He's smart. He's small, but he's aggressive. He's feisty. I think despite his stature, he will fit in with Jawan Jennings of being this guy who just wants to destroy somebody. Again, he's really tiny. He's Cody Schrader size, but playing receiver. But he's just a baller. And sometimes you can tell when a player is a baller. Dante Pettis, not a baller. Not a baller.
He's had more preseason touchdowns. I think he had 2 touchdowns yesterday. All he does is score preseason touchdowns. Put some respect on his name.
Doing the whole cat meow meow in the end zone thing. It's not going to work. But
catching some passes from Caleb Williams right now in the preseason.
He's the next Mahomes. Okay, you better watch out.
I mean, he's been good, no doubt. But
I think Cowing can be a playmaker in this offense, and I think Kyle Shanahan definitely has found something with him where it may not be all the time, maybe sporadic, but Cowing gives you a boost off the bench you didn't have last year or even the last 3 years. He just he raises the level of your receiver room to a point of having another bench playmaker, which you give Kyle Shanahan that, it's going to be really fun to see.
Yeah, no doubt. And let's not pretend as if every time he touched the ball or every single play he made on the field was a positive one. He had a number of positive plays. The 38-yard reception down the right sideline had a nice 19-yard gain on an end around. I think he's probably the name you're hearing more than anyone else coming out of this game. Jacob Cowing, he looked great. He was awesome. He's explosive. He's fast, showing off that 4.3 speed. Now, we got to give both sides. He had a pretty painful holding penalty that took away like a nice gain by Cody Schrader on a run to the left side. That was a rough one. And then he also caught a quick little wide receiver screen on the left side, and it was blown up immediately. He tried to then reverse field and then kind of kept going backwards and lost more yards. Exactly. He'll quickly learn, and this is the time to learn it. He'll quickly learn this is not the Pac-12 anymore. You're not trying to run around Arizona State defenders. You're not trying to run around Washington State defenders. No offense to the Sun Devils or the Cougars. You're trying to run around NFL defenders, and you can't do that at this level, even if you have 4.3 speed. Everyone is quick. Everyone can keep up with you. Maybe if you get out in the open field, you can run past them. But if you're trying to reverse field in the NFL, unless you're Tyreek Hill, it's probably not going to work for you. So that did not work. Yeah, shout out Ken. Ken, the Dolphins fan, made eye contact with me when I said Tyreek Hill. Congratulations, you have the fastest man in the NFL. I wish he was a Niner. Anyway, Jake McCowing made a couple of mistakes tonight, but for the most part, Sterling, he had a very impactful in a positive way game. And those moments, like the trying to reverse field, is something you try once or twice, and then you quickly learn you can't do that anymore. Instead of losing 5 yards, maybe you take your loss of 1. And that's something that he needs to learn, and today was a step in that direction as well. These are all positive things. Like, the result on the field in that one particular moment was not good, a loss of 5, but these are all development steps that you have to take for a young guy who's been used to just running around everybody every time he's had the football at any level of football that he's ever played. It's different at this level, and he will learn that, and today was a step in that right direction. So, I'm with you. Jacob Cowing is a guy we could see have an impact on this team potentially sooner than Ricky Pearsall because he's going to play special teams and he might be able to come in for, specific hand-picked moments by Shanahan where, we're going to get Cowing the ball here because we know he has the skill set to make this kind of play work. So I'm with you. Cowing, very, very positive today. And honestly, Sterling, I mean, you look at some of the other wide receivers that are fighting for roster spots right now.
Terrible.
Very, very, very bad. So Jacob Cowing overall stock up and almost the entire rest of the room stock down. So he created a little bit of space. Now, he was always going to make the roster, but in terms of guys that you look at that could have an impact on this team, Cowing took a major step forward, not just for himself, but kind of put a little bit of distance between himself and some other names.
And it's his first NFL action ever.
Yep.
Yeah, he's a rookie. He didn't play last week. This was his NFL debut, if you will. And if I told you a 4th-round pick that was likely going to be the 5th or 6th receiver on the depth chart, be a special teamer primarily, touched the ball a total of 5 times, had 70 yards, and almost caught a touchdown pass. That's really good.
Yeah.
That's what you want to see from Ricky Pearsall. That's what you want first-round picks to do, and Callen was doing it against starters against the Saints, who, again, held a Niners starting offense, if you will. I guess 3 of them, being not even Aaron Banks, but Pearsall, Puni, and McKivitz, basically, to 0 points. So, it's a stellar start, and, I don't think he needed to jump up that high to make the roster or have his stock bump up too much, but it does help your stock when players like Ronnie Bell and Trent Taylor and Tay Martin look like practice squad players. And it's no disrespect, but when you want to win, when you're trying to win a Super Bowl, injuries inevitably happen. You have to have people come behind that can pick up the pieces. And Ronnie Bell was on punt returns last year. Fumbled twice, got benched, didn't play anymore. You have players like Tay Martin, who's battled injuries off and on his entire, few years of the beginning of his career. He hasn't done much. Then Trent Taylor, who I called a basket last week because he doesn't give you much from a playmaking perspective.
He'll catch the ball and then that's it.
There was a play today for Trent Taylor where he caught, it may have been a screen pass, and he has 5 yards of wide open space to his right.
Yep. No
one's over there, no defenders. And instead of running towards the outside, he tries to cut inside to the other 11 defenders, the only 11 defenders on the field. But instead of missing them, runs right into the back of his blocker. And you're like, Trent, I know you're a little older. Maybe you need some LASIK. Maybe the eyes are going. But, you know what you do? You run to the open field. Give me at least a couple yards. You could have had 7. You got us maybe 2. And whereas Cowing, maybe lost a couple yards here or there on the screen pass he caught, but he made 4 guys miss en route to losing a couple yards. He's pulling a Marion Barber, makes 13 guys miss and then gets 1 yard to gain. And Joshua Dobbs did the exact same thing today, whereas Trent Taylor and Ronnie Bell dropped a handful of passes, arguably the best passes of the game from Brandon Allen.
Yep.
Ronnie Bell dropped it. And just Danny Gray, who, I don't know who it was, I won't name the outlet, put on Twitter, what a catch by Danny Gray.
Oh,
he dropped it, then caught it. It's like, that's an interception. It's not a good play.
Yeah.
I like Danny. And Danny, of all the receivers in the room, former 3rd-round pick, needed an amazing day, needed to prove himself today. He didn't. Danny Gray is getting cut. He is done. He's another 3rd-round pick bust in San Francisco. That said, he'll probably be in Kansas City this year and catch a game-winning touchdown in the Super Bowl. Just saying. It's probably going to happen.
Too soon. Too soon. Yeah, 3rd-round pick in 2022. So we're looking at 2 years ago. He was drafted out of SMU, and I'm with you. I think this was the nail in the coffin for Danny Gray and the 49ers. He's not making this roster. You're in an environment in the preseason where for you it's do or die. It is do or die, and you're anonymous in a preseason game against a lot of backups. You're playing basically the entire game because the coaching staff is trying to see what you have. They're giving you every opportunity against some starters in the first half, fair, against a lot of, all backups in the second half, and 3rd stringers and 4th stringers that are trying to make the Saints roster. And you're anonymous aside from 1 catch for 13 yards that you mentioned earlier was a catch, sure, ultimately in the scorebook, in the stat sheet, it's a catch. It was a pass that he had to jump for, but it hits him straight in the hands. He's not moving. He's still and jumps for it. It's an easy catch. Every person in the NFL, I don't care if you're a running back, if you're a defensive back, if you're a tight end, if you're a wide receiver, you make that catch 100 times out of 100. And he made the catch, but not first before he tipped it up in the air. And if there's anyone within 5 yards of him, they're picking it off and it's going the other way. That was a catch, sure, but it was not a good rep for Danny Gray. And that was your only contribution to the box score in a do-or-die environment. This is not pile on the kid and say he's a bad football player. No, this is not that. This is simply saying Danny Gray has no business making this roster. No business making this roster. I can say the same thing for Trent Taylor. You're right. I mean, he's a veteran, and he's got a leg up in terms of I don't know.
That's it. Just vibes.
And friendship. Like he's he's George Kittle's best friend, apparently. And obviously he's been on this team before. He knows Kyle Shanahan and a lot of the coaching staff. He has a leg up there in terms of his relationships on this team. There's no doubt about it. But Trent Taylor is not one of the 5 or 6 best receivers currently on this 49er team. And Danny Gray certainly isn't either. I'd be surprised if either of these guys make this roster, Sterling. And today might have been the final nail in the coffin for both, but specifically Danny Gray. It's sad because I was high on him coming out of SMU, 3rd-round pick. The Niners have made somewhat of a habit of striking out on some of these early picks the last handful of years, and Danny Gray might be another one to throw into that category. It
just shows you that speed doesn't always translate to the NFL, whether it's John Ross, Dante Pettis, Danny Gray. Like, you can be the fastest guy at SMU, and Danny Gray was. And I don't know what happened in between his college, his final year at SMU, coming into the NFL, because he popped onto the scene, right? The go ball against the Packers. Oh, here comes Danny Gray. It's going to be great. And Shanahan was trying to get him somewhat involved this rookie season. Then Jimmy comes back in as a quarterback, and then I get that the fit's not exactly there with the quarterback and play style you want from Danny Gray. But it's not like Gray's ever had his footing, ever. He's been hurt, in the doghouse, inconsistent hands. Ultimately, you're looking at Jacob Cowling and Pearsall, and it's like, people even forget Danny Gray's on this team. He's a 3rd-round pick. How do you forget a 3rd-round pick's on your team 2 years ago? It's a preseason game, and he's anonymous. Like, I don't know what other sign you need. Like, the dude couldn't even introduce himself to everyone in a preseason game. Like, I don't know what more we need to know. Nothing. And that's the thing. And I think I told you last week that despite being the most crowded room, the receiver position might be the most straightforward competition. It's the big guns, the 2 draft picks, and the vet Chris Conley. Everybody else, no. Ronnie Bell's probably a practice squad player because he can do punts and maybe fill in here or there. He likes to block. He's a willing blocker. The issue is when Kyle wants to say no block, no rock, and Bell says, okay, I can block. When you pass him the rock, he drops it. It's like, if you can't hold on to the rock, then it's not worth keeping you. And look, some of these guys are young. They can go elsewhere and flourish. I hope they do. I will just say this. For the lack of receiver play, for the lack of getting open for the quarterbacks today, like, that was a big deal for Brock. Nobody was open. Nobody could get open. Because they're getting locked down by the Saints starters or second stringers because these guys can't separate despite having 4.3 speed. I am so thankful that when you get away from the receivers and the tight ends and you move inward to the offensive line, Dominic Puni is just stellar. Yes. Like, the right guard position has been a black hole for the last 2 years. Whether it's Brunskill, Person, Feliciano, Burford, and there's been ups and downs in there. But there was a play today, and we can probably dive into it a little later, but Dominic Puni just looks like he belongs. If you circled, looks like an NFL guard. If you picked out the same play that I picked out, because there was one moment that I saw, and the football nerd in me came out, and it was amazing, Sterling. If we picked the same play, he was awesome. Dominic Puni looks like not just a starting caliber player, but a starting caliber player in year 1 of his first preseason as a 3rd-round pick. Like, he makes you forget about, Spencer Burford's here. He played games for us the last 2 seasons. John Feliciano started the last couple years. Dominic Puni just looks like a mauling, high intellectual guard, and you're like, do we finally find the missing piece? Yeah. Because he looks amazing. High intellectual. That's a great way to put it. It just seems like the game comes naturally to him. He picks it up easy. He knows where to be. He knows what to look for. He's got good footwork. He's a natural. And it's easy to see that. You could see it in any sport. I think it's maybe easiest to see in basketball when there's a natural basketball player and they move the right way. They're smooth in their movements and they're always in the right spot on the floor and they make crisp and on-time passes. It's maybe not as easy to see in football and specifically like
line play, but you watch Dominic Puni for a handful of reps and you'll see it. Like, it's natural to him, and we can get into that coming up on the other side. I want you to tell me the play that you circled for him, because I had one as well that I was going to nerd out about coming up on the other side. We can get into that. A lot more to get into, positives, some negatives, overall stock up, stock down for some players. We've gone through a lot of them already, but we can circle back there, and we're always here to take your calls and react to your texts. One to react to really quick from the 650. Shanahan didn't call the plays tonight. The touchdown run on 4th and 1 wasn't his call. It was his call. He called plays in the first half. He handed it over to Kubiak in the second half. By the way, we had Kubiak versus Kubiak. New offensive coordinator for the Saints, a Kubiak, a former Niner offensive coach, and now the Niners play caller in the second half of this game was also another Kubiak. So a fun moment in this preseason game as well. But we can get into all that and more. 888-957-9570 as overtime continues. We've got 1 hour left. It's Sterling Bennett, Mark Randy with you. More coming up on the other side here on 95.7 The Game.
Why choose a Sleep Number smart bed?
Can I make my side softer?
Can I make my side firmer whenever I want?
Can we sleep cooler?
Option outside. It's caught. Jacob Cowing right on cue. First and goal, San Francisco. 39-yard strike in the bucket for Cowing.
Now back to Overtime with Sterling Bennett and Mark Grandy on 95.7 The Game.
That was Adam Amin on Fox calling Josh Dobbs to Jacob Cowing for 38 yards down the right sideline, set up the Niners' only touchdown of the game, and ultimately they win this one over the New Orleans Saints by a final score of 16-10. Josh Dobbs led the way in that second quarter with that 38-yard strike to Jacob Cowing, and yeah, that was the little pump and go. Josh Dobbs, the little pump fake in the pocket. You get the corner on that island on the outside guarding the speedy Cowing. Just a second's worth of hesitation, just a little bit. And then Sterling, Cowing's got that speed to allow that little moment of hesitation to be the reason you get beat. And it was on display there. And those are the kinds of moments where you start to wonder, all right, Shanahan's mind might be running with the possibilities that he might be able to get this guy some action this season. He's not going to be, obviously, like a receiver that starts multiple games unless there are major injuries and is going to get like 500 yards receiving as a rookie. Like, of course, that's not going to happen unless something crazy takes place early in the season. But those are the kinds of moments these are the kinds of physical tools where you could see how he could fit in for a play or two a game here or there, and he can make an impact, no doubt, on this team this year.
Jacob Cowing should be what McLeod was last year, the backup Debo.
Yeah, good point.
Where it's not going to be all-pro Debo. It's not going to be him grounding and pounding through players. Cowing can do some of that stuff. It's more of a finesse game, more of a speed game. But we saw tonight that he can do the end around. We saw tonight that he can go deep and beat a fine cornerback, if you will. Like, Cowing has all of the necessary tools to succeed in a Shanahan offense. And I think while his role may not be pivotal to a Super Bowl, I think it definitely is going to help aid them. Whereas last year when Debo goes down, you have McLeod, who, no offense to him, just, I don't know, he has speed, just not really a playmaker.
Yeah.
Cowing is much more of if I have to go to the outside, I will. If I have to go and make three guys miss, I can. That's something they didn't have. And to Joshua Dobbs' credit, I didn't know he could throw the ball that well. That was a missile.
It was.
To the right sideline, and it was a near perfect ball to the receiver going deep. And it's like, okay, like, I watched that Steelers game a couple days ago, last night. They might need a quarterback. Joshua Dobbs might fit because Fields and Wilson looked terrible, and Joshua Dobbs has looked stellar through the last 2 weeks of play.
Yeah. By the way, you brought up like someone else might need a player on the 49ers. That's a good point. And obviously Josh Dobbs, quarterbacks, you have someone that looks good in the preseason that's a backup or a third string guy for you. You get a quarterback needy team like the Vikings were the team that a lot of people theorized might be trying to trade for a quarterback, and maybe a reunion with Josh Dobbs because he was there last year. Once J.J. McCarthy underwent season-ending knee surgery, they appear to be fine with Sam Darnold. But the other position where the 49ers might have a desire to trade, if there's another team out there, Sterling, that needs a punter, Presley Harvin. Who the hell is this guy? Downing every single punt inside the 10-yard line. 3 punts down inside the 10. One at the 6, one at the 5, one at the 8. This guy is putting a little bit of pressure on Mitch Wishnowsky to get back healthy because he's been incredible so far.
I guarantee you, Mitch walked over to Kyle and said, "Hey, I'm fine. I'm healthy now. I can go and coach. Don't worry about it. I'm good. You can go ahead and cut him, please. My job needs to be secured." Presley Harvin, I believe a former Steelers punter, has looked stellar off of the scrap heap.
Yeah.
Which, yeah, backup punter, whatever. But, I mean, he looks like the punt god. Everything is exactly where you want it to be. And it's like, how did the NFL, and look, it's a punter. We get that. But, like, punters are valuable. Very valuable.
Yes.
Shane Leckler played almost 20 years in Oakland because he was so good as a punter. Like, they're valuable. Andy Lee for a long time.
Yep.
You need punters in the NFL, and Presley Harvin, I'm sure, will find his way on a team some way after roster cuts happen. But, I mean, man, talk about a weapon you can have on special teams. He was so good.
He was awesome.
We'll see how that goes as the season progresses. But anybody want a punter for a 4th-round pick? Please.
Yeah, if someone gets hurt, some punter gets hurt and is going to miss a decent amount of the regular season here in the next couple of weeks before the Niners got to get their roster down, I'm sure that would no doubt be a position the Niners would be willing to trade away from, because you're not carrying multiple punters with you into week number 1. You're going to cut them when the time comes if you don't trade them away. So if someone is in need and is willing to trade you, I don't know, like you said, a 4th, maybe even a 5th, hell, a 6th-round pick. Niners consistently turn those picks into all pros. Yeah, give me any of those guys. Give me any of those picks, and we'll get a deal done. But yeah, I mean, it's preseason. We're talking about punters, but that's how good Presley Harvin was today. Hopefully that Mitch Wishnowsky recovers and it's not a major thing. He should be good and he should be fine for week number 1, and maybe he's fine for preseason game number 3, but something worth pointing out. To get back to Jacob Cowing, though, we do have Kyle Shanahan post-game talking about Jacob Cowing. Here's what the Niner head coach had to say about Jacob Cowing potentially opening the season with a role on this team, specifically as punt returner. Here's Shanahan.
I mean, we want to figure out whoever the best punt returner is on our 53. I mean, he looked pretty good today. We drafted him hoping that he could have the potential to do it. Tonight was really the first time that we were able to get him out there, and, he's had a week of being healthy, so he's definitely got a chance to, but tonight was a step in the right direction.
That's exactly what you were talking about, Sterling. Even if it's not necessarily consistent wide receiver snaps, Cowing is going to have most likely a role on this team from day one, because he's going to be your punt returner, very well could be your kick returner, and that's a position that is valuable. They're not necessarily going to make or break your team. I guess they can break your team if you muff and fumble punts or kickoffs, which we've experienced as Niner fans. Sorry to bring up terrible memories, but he's going to have a role on this team from day one, no doubt, and that's not something that most rookies can say going into this season.
It's very rare that Kyle will praise a rookie player. It's very rare he'll also play a rookie player.
True.
And he has praised Dominic Puni last week. He also has praised Cowing this week. Now, again, it's preseason week number 2. We shall see how things play out. But I have a weird, sneaky feeling this may be a draft class. If I want to project, it might be as impactful as 2019 was. Now, that was Nick Bosa, and that was Debo and Dre Greenlaw, and I get that. Those are 2-3 phenomenal players, all pro, near Pro Bowl players every single year.
You're leaving out the punt god himself, Mitch Wishnowsky, from that draft. 4th round pick.
You're right. See, punters do go in the 4th round, so any team needs a punter. But this draft class, potential-wise, has the chance to be equal, near, if you will, that 2019 class in regards to how impactful they can be in setting this roster up for success in the next wave of stars. And that starts with, Pearsall and Renardo Green and Jacob Cowings, but also Dominic Puni, who Niner fans have fallen in love with him so quickly. You hear him talk, he reminds you of Joe Staley, just so energetic and happy to be in the room and, wants to have a good time, albeit he's not playing left tackle. Dominic Puni just feels like a pro, and he seems to take things in stride. Where guys get overwhelmed, they're rookies, they get in the doghouse, they lose their confidence. Dominic Puni's like, yeah, I'm just happy to be here, man. I'm in the NFL, we're having a good time. And that really reminds me of Joe Staley, where, yeah, Staley was phenomenal, could be a Hall of Famer one day, but he was just happy to be there every single day.
Okay, you brought up Puni. We gotta talk about this. We both had circled one particular play that stood out. It's probably the same play. For me, Sterling, and you can just let me know if it is the same play, it was the 3rd and goal from the 1-yard line right before the Josh Dobbs touchdown run on 4th and goal from the 1. Is that the same play?
Yes.
Okay, so Puni at right guard, 3rd and goal from the 1, final 10 seconds of the first half. Three down linemen for the Saints. Puni's lined up opposite one of the guys on the outside, on of course the left side of the D line, the right side of the offensive line. And the pass rusher there, I don't know what Saint player it was, but essentially running kind of a stunt. He does not rush right at Puni. He runs around and then cuts around the right tackle, Colton McKivitz. But Puni begins blocking him, gives him a little bit of a shove to the outside. The pass rusher kind of is willing to go that way based on how that defense was drawn up, and basically just runs right past McKivitz. I'm not really sure what McKivitz was doing in that moment. He did not have very good footwork, allowed this pass rusher, to get right around him. So he has the edge, and he has a straight line right to the quarterback, Josh Dobbs, who's looking in the end zone, has no idea that this pass rusher is coming. Puni suddenly, because there's only a 3-man rush, has no one to block because the guy that he thought he was going to block just ran away from him and got around McKivitz. He takes a second, looks for any other potential rushers or any other potential guys he can block, like literally a split second, sees no one, and immediately, instinctively, Sterling takes a spin around his left shoulder. His back is currently to the pass rusher who has since gotten around McKivitz, and he spins off his left shoulder and cuts off the pass rusher before he can get to Josh Dobbs and just shoves him away. Like a spin move. Somehow he knows what this pass rusher is doing without even seeing where he is. He knows exactly where he is. He takes a split second to decide, I've got to help on the edge. He spins, makes a beeline for that spot, and cuts him off before he can get to Josh Dobbs. That, Sterling, does not look like anything I've seen a Niners rookie offensive lineman do in a very, very long time. We talked about it before we went to break. The instincts there, how natural the game comes to him. I guarantee you, if it hasn't happened already, it's going to happen soon. The Niners offensive line group, Chris Kasarik and company and everyone involved in this entire coaching staff, they're going to use that piece of tape and they're going to show it to the entire offensive line group because that was a special, special play. It ultimately resulted in an incomplete pass because Trent Taylor couldn't haul in a pass in the end zone. It was deflected just barely, not all on Trent Taylor. It's not a sexy play because it resulted in no gain, but Dominic Puni with an awesome rep, and for a rookie offensive lineman, Sterling, to do that, eye-opening. And as you said, it just kind of makes it seem like this dude went under everyone's radar in the draft, and he seems destined to be a starter and kind of answer this team's questions at right guard.
There's a reason Dominic Puni caught the eye of Kyle Shanahan. Yes, the 4-4 shuttle time helps, the 7-4-7-3 cone. Obviously, his athletic ability is there. But then you go back into his college stats, 25 straight games, nearly 1,600 snaps at Kansas. Not a single sack allowed. Only allowed 4 pressures in 2 seasons at Kansas. Didn't allow a single sack or quarterback hit in 324 pass blocking snaps. That's college Dominic Puni. You can see the high intellect now in the NFL where, yes, he's a rookie. Yes, he'll make mistakes. There'll be a play where we're just like, yeah, the defensive tackle bodied him up and blew right by him. It's going to happen. That's the NFL. But to have the intellect, the wherewithal to push off the rushing edge rusher, push him off to your right tackle, realize, oh, crap, he wasn't ready for him.
He's now going to get around my offense lineman.
Spin all the way around and pick up the slack. You know, a lot of times in whether you're a child or you're working, if you're not doing something and your response is, well, my job is done, your boss will tell you, well, help somebody else. Go be a team player.
Yep.
Dominic Puni's a team player. He wants to pick up the slack. You know, I used to work at Walmart right out of college. And I'll tell you what, I respect the Walmart workers a heck of a lot more now than I used to.
I'm sure.
But I'll tell you what, it was if the chemicals aren't done and the vitamins aren't done and whatever else, the paper's not done, if you finish your section, if you're in the dog food section, you're going to get your butt over there and help those guys out as well. That's Dominic Puni. He's finished his job. He's going to go help you out now too. And I think when you want to win a Super Bowl, yes, you need, the high IQ. Yes, you need to have the ability to pass block and not allow sacks. But ultimately, you need to have players that want to get their hands dirty and help the guy next to them. Spencer Burford doesn't seem to have all of that put together. John Feliciano is a phenomenal run blocker, isn't a great pass blocker. Dominic Puni's a rookie, but the high effort is on display every single day. Whether it is in run blocking and pass blocking, helping out Colton McKivitz, who I know Niner fans are saying he needs it a lot. Like, you may have someone that can guide him in the right direction or limit the sacks he gives up. Not every single game, but maybe a couple critical plays, Dominic Puni saves the day. And in this case, in the red zone, he may have saved a sack. He may have saved a timeout from having to be called and ultimately saved you a touchdown.
At the very least, he saved your quarterback from getting hit. Like, I think Dobbs is getting that ball off, but he's getting hit, and who knows if that hit results in an injury or not. Like, that could be the difference in Brock Purdy staying healthy or not. A single play like that. That's how brutal this sport is, but that is a potential moment where your quarterback gets hurt if Puni does not make that play. And I agree with everything that you're talking about. And of course, this was Dobbs in at this moment, but I'm speaking if it happens in a regular season game, it would be Brock Purdy back there. And that kind of effort might be the difference in him staying healthy or not. To add on, though, to what you're saying, I don't think it's just as simple as this is a guy who's willing to help out everybody else. It's great to be willing to do that, but it's also, are you capable of doing that? Like, some people just aren't capable of doing that. Like, I did my job. I have no one to block. This is great. I won my rep. Congrats. Like, I did it. Like, yeah, no one's rushing against me. This is an easy rep for me. And I think a lot of people, specifically a lot of rookies, wouldn't even know, Sterling, wouldn't even have the wherewithal to spin off your left shoulder. The pass rusher, he's in your blind spot. He's behind you. You can't see him. To spin and then make a sprint to cut off his path to the quarterback, you could want to help your right tackle. It could be the one thing you want to do in this game. Not everyone has the instinct and the ability to know what is needed in that moment, and he just seems to get it. It's what I was talking about before we went to break. The game just seems to come naturally to him. Like, he's in the right spot at the right time. He has good footwork. Like, the footwork between McKivitz and Puni on this rep alone, oh my God. Puni's footwork was incredible. McKivitz seemed like he almost tripped over his own foot, and it's why the pass rusher got around him. Like, it was night and day between those two. And McKivitz, he's not a world beater. He's not going to be a Pro Bowler at right tackle. He's a serviceable right tackle, okay? Like, league average, maybe a little. Like, he's not special, but he's not terrible. He's not one of the worst right tackles in the NFL. There are certainly better. There are certainly worse. But the difference in it's just one rep. Obviously, we could pick and choose. There are reps where Puni gets beat. There are reps where McKivitz looks great and Puni looks bad. Like, we are cherry picking at one particular moment here, but Puni is a rookie. And for him to have that kind of instincts, it just makes you excited about what could potentially be to come as he continues to develop his body and as he continues to test himself against NFL pass rushers and against NFL defensive tackles. You just can imagine that this is a guy that's going to continue to improve, and it's exciting, Sterling, to finally have not just a right guard, but a drafted offensive lineman that you feel like could have an impact, a positive impact on this team this early in his career, because it has been a long time since any of us 49er fans have felt good about any of the offensive linemen this team has drafted.
What do you think the reaction will be if he doesn't start week 1 against the Jets? For as good as he's been, for as hyped up as he's been and how well he's performed, if John Feliciano is healthy and is out there week number 1 against the Jets, what's the reaction?
A lot of confusion, because he's looked, I mean, honestly, I wouldn't be terribly shocked, because for as much fun as we poke at the offensive line, Feliciano was pretty darn good last year. Like, we can be honest about that. Feliciano was not bad at all.
Probably win the Super Bowl if he's out there.
Probably. This was that one rep at the very end of regulation, and it resulted in a field goal instead of a touchdown, and who knows how that game goes otherwise. Sorry to bring up more bad memories, although that was really you. I just filled in the blanks. But it's not as if Feliciano was a player the Niners went into this offseason saying, this is the guy we need to replace. Right. Feliciano was very, very good. They probably did not expect Puni to be this good immediately. Obviously, they drafted him for a reason, But I would imagine if you were to ask Shanahan on draft day, who's your starting right guard, he probably says Feliciano. Now you might be rethinking that because Puni's been so good and Feliciano hasn't been healthy yet. To answer your question, I wouldn't be terribly shocked, but I would imagine if that does happen, there's going to be quite a lot of noise from the fan base who doesn't really understand what's going on, because Puni has been maybe the star in terms of the rookie class. In terms of surprises, it has been Puni, I think, so far this preseason and training camp.
I'd agree. I think that if Puni's not playing week number 1 or starting week number 1, Pearsall not starting doesn't surprise me. Healthy or not, makes sense. Ayuk will hopefully be there. Debo and Juwan are your top 3. Renardo Green starting. Okay, you have Yadam, you got Ward, and you got Lenore. That makes sense. Cowing's a backup receiver. Guarendo's not playing over Christian McCaffrey. Cool. You're not starting Bethune over Warner or Campbell or Winters or even Curtis Robinson, who had a phenomenal game today.
Yep, good point.
But Dominic Puni has a clear-cut path to starting week number 1 as a rookie over the rest of the entire class, and he's performed better than all of them throughout training camp and through 2 preseason games, and has shown on tape and also shown just in highlights in itself. I think if we treated quarterbacks, or if we treated offensive linemen like quarterbacks and put their highlights on Twitter, Dominic Puni would be the Caleb Williams of this class so far. He's been that good, and he's put up that many highlights where it's, okay, how can you not play this kid? I get it. You play the vet, and then if he struggles, put the rookie in. I totally get that. That's how people play quarterbacks, whether it's Jimmy and Trey or whoever else. There's a reason why Gardner Minshew is starting in Vegas, not Aiden O'Connell. You start the vet and go to the rookie. But ultimately, it's who helps you win now? Puni hasn't shown you anything to say he'll struggle, so why not play him? That would be my kind of, I love you, Kyle, but Puni's looked pretty darn good.
We'll put it this way. If it's Spencer Burford starting at right guard week 1.
With a broken hand.
Then we got some problems. Some major problems. Unless there's injuries elsewhere, that's not going to happen. Feliciano, Puni, I guess I could understand either. But in terms of my Niner excitement, and as a Niner fan, who do I want to see? There's no doubt it's Dominic Puni, because, you look, and we've been talking about draft classes a lot. We talked about it on draft night, of course, and we've talked about it the first 2 preseason games here on Overtime on 95.7 The Game. You look at the Niners' history, this regime's history of drafting offensive linemen, Sterling, it is terrible. Absolutely terrible. Yeah. Mike McGlinchey, who was the first round pick for the Niners in the second draft of the Shanahan-Lynch era. Mike McGlinchey, and he was fine for you. He started almost every single game in his, 6 seasons with the team, 5 seasons, 5 or 6 seasons with the team. And then you have just a who's who of who the hell are you, aside from Aaron Banks. And really, I say a who's who, you don't even have that many. You have Aaron Banks in 2021 after not drafting an offensive lineman in 2020, or an offensive, I guess you did draft one in 2019 in Justin's school. But that's just, not terrible, but not great. The other offensive linemen you drafted are Spencer Burford and Nick Zakelj in 2022.
Yikes.
Yeah, you did not draft a single offensive lineman last year. And then it's this year, Dominic Puni, and later on you drafted Jarrett Kingston. First of all, you don't have many drafted offensive linemen. And second of all, when you have drafted, at the best they've essentially become, aside from Mike McGlinchey, at best they've essentially become spot start guys who you hope you don't really need to play unless you have injuries. And if they are playing, you're a little worried at that part of the offensive line because they haven't shown any reason to have confidence in them. One of them, Nick Zakelj, started today. You talked a lot about Jalen Moore. Zakelj was very bad as well. So the excitement as a Niner fan, Sterling, it is palpable with Dominic Puni because it is a position that we have been so starved of offensive linemen. And it's awesome to see him playing this well. All right, we got to hit a quick break. When we come back, we got more Kyle Shanahan talking postgame about this one. He's talking about Brock Purdy and why he put him out there for 3 drives, why he took so many hits. We also got Brock Purdy talking about that. We can come back and hear from Shanahan and Brock on the other side. We've got 30 minutes left with you. We will also hand out game balls as we always do here on Overtime. That's coming up on the other side. It's Sterling Bennett, Mark Grandy with you. More OT next on 95.7 The Game.
Are you ready to boost your game at work, explode with energy at the gym, and really hit one out of the park in the bedroom? Balanced Medical Solutions has your back with the best solutions for ED, PE, weight gain, and chronic fatigue. Join
which is collapsing, and it's finished off. T.Y. McGill Jr. was in on it. A little bit of help from Alex Barrett. They're going to say that ball came out, and indeed Barrett helps get the takeaway for San Francisco.
Now back to Overtime with Sterling Bennett and Mark Grandy on 95.7 The Game.
That was Adam Amin on Fox calling Alex Barrett with a strip sack, and he recovered the football himself. Alex Barrett, entering his third year out of San Diego State, has spent some time on the Niners practice squad, a reserve defensive lineman with a nice moment there. Good for him. One of the storylines, Sterling, and welcome back to Overtime. It's Grandy and Sterling with you here on 95.7 The Game. One of the storylines leading into this game, it was an unfortunate one because one of the few defensive line, I don't know if star is the right word, but one of the players who had a nice moment in week number 1 of the preseason was Kalia Davis, who had the team's only sack against the Titans. He has since underwent surgery and will miss a decent chunk of the year. Kyle Shanahan said maybe around midseason, but we don't really know exactly how long Kalia Davis will be out. So one of the questions for the Niners entering the rest of the preseason, Sterling, was Who else is going to fill in on the defensive line? Because you're going to need some guys. I'm not saying that I think Alex Barrett's going to have an impact on the team this year, but that had to feel nice for him, knowing that there's an opening. You get a strip sack and you recover the ball yourself. A nice moment for Alex Barrett.
Would I be wrong to say this is the weakest depth they've had at edge rusher since 2019?
Yeah, it's not great. You got Leonard
Jonathan
Floyd and Nick
Garvin's-
Bosa, and then
which is fine. It's great.
you got Yetur Gross-Matos.
Upside,
and then
sure.
you've got Robert Beal.
Jonathan Garvin? Nobody else?
Yeah, that's about it.
And the reason I bring that up is because for a player like Alex Barrett, who many fans may not know, or if they do know him, it's simply just a training camp body or preseason hero, if you will. He has a chance to make the roster. Drake Jackson's out for the entire year, not even going to play a snap with the knee injury. There is an opportunity for players like Shaquille Brown, who almost caused a fumble today, and then players like Alex Barrett, who did cause a fumble and got it back and recovered it. These depth guys who we may shrug off and say, who's that? Well, it's nobody. The preseason body. No, those guys could be your fifth edge rusher this year and could play maybe a meaningful game here or there, or be in late in the third quarter when Nick Bosa's tired or Leonard Floyd's tired or someone gets hurt. So it may sound meaningless, but for a player like Barrett, plays like that are what help him make a roster where he could be a player this year for us.
Yeah, no doubt. It's certainly an area to keep in mind. I mentioned Kalia Davis, who's going to be out for a decent chunk of the regular season. He's a defensive tackle. We're talking more about edge rushers, and that's what Alex Barrett is. But you've also got a little bit of an opening at the defensive tackle spot. Your starters, of course, are going to be Malik Collins and Javon Hargrave. Assuming health, they will be the starters in the middle on the defensive line. Beyond that, without Kalia Davis, you're going to be relying on guys like Kevin Givens, Jordan Elliott, T.Y. McGill. T.Y. McGill had a couple of nice reps. He was in on that sack as well that Alex Barrett had that you just heard Adam Amin on Fox call. But you're going to have to rely on a number of guys that haven't really ever proven it at the NFL level before now. And someone out of that group is going to have to step up and have an impact on this team, because you're going to need bodies. If the Niners in the past years are any indicator, you need depth at those spots. And while maybe the Niners, you could argue this is one of the better maybe starting groups of four that they've had in a while. I mean, Leonard Floyd is a proven pass rusher, and he's been really good at that spot for his entire NFL career, and it's been a decent career now. That's a good person to pair on the opposite side of Nick Bosa. And Javon Hargrave, if he gets back to the level he was at a couple of years ago, that kind of fills in the Eric Armstead hole. And Malik Collins, a gigantic body you got from the Texans. You could see that being a pretty fearsome group of four, Sterling. But beyond that, you have a lot of guys who you're not really sure what you're going to get. And there's a ton of room for 2, 3, 4 of those guys to take a major step forward in their career this season. I think a lot of people are pointing at Robert Beal Jr., who was a recent draft pick, who you hope you're going to get something out of. He was drafted in the 5th round just last year, so entering his second season. Played 4 games last year. If he takes a step forward, that will go a long way into deepening that group. But we're going to look back, say, come like week 6, Sterling, we're going to look back and say, wow, this was the guy we didn't really expect to have an impact. It's just a matter of the Niners finding who that guy is yet, because you know you're going to need it. You're desperately going to need it at some point. You just don't know where it's going to come from.
I think that same conversation translates to the linebacker room, where you have Fred Warner, All-Pro Fred. You have Devondre Campbell, who I think, although made his preseason debut today, played pretty well. Wasn't out there making spectacular plays, but was wrapping up tackles and doing his job. But Curtis Robinson, who has been on this practice squad the last couple of years, he has been the primary backup Mike linebacker, competing with Demetrius Flanagan-Falls during training camp and practice. Curtis Robinson had the best game of his NFL career thus far, which consists of practice squad elevations and preseason. But for a team desperately looking for backup linebackers that cannot just play Mike linebacker, but can also be put in a position where they may have to start and they're not going to blink. D. Winters didn't play today, so no knock on him. He looked phenomenal last week. Obviously some ups and some downs, but ultimately a really big up for him against Tennessee in week 1. But Curtis Robinson knows this defense. He's played with Fred and Dre Greenlaw for a handful of years on the practice squad. And today, all that work had looked to kind of come out and be put on the slate and say, here's what I can do. And I think he's better to me than Demetrius Flanagan-Falls. He's outplayed players like Jalen Graham, who continues to struggle in pass coverage, and even players like Tatum Bethune, who I love Bethune. I think he'll be a player in a year or so, but you need a body now. And I think Curtis Robinson can be the Alex Barrett of the linebacker room of, hey, you've been here for a couple of years. You've been hanging around, being a water boy, right? Go out there and play. And I think he can actually prove his worth and kind of prove the Niners right to keep him around and not cut him the past couple of years.
Yeah, I think if we were to maybe we talked a lot about what Jacob Cowling did today, and he obviously, I think, already had a roster spot, but 100% solidified it, and he has a role. If we're maybe to try to find his counterpart on defense from today, who took the biggest step forward potentially, who gained the most trust from the coaching staff today on the defensive side of the ball, I think you're right. I think it's Curtis Robinson. I mean, I think he locked up a roster spot with his performance today. He was awesome. He was all over the place in this one. He had an awesome day. And, we put a list together of players whose stock went up today, players whose stock went down today. We talked about a lot of them already. Aside from Curtis Robinson, who you just mentioned, the only other who's on my stock up list, I put Puni on there, I put Cowling on there, I put Josh Dobbs on there, Curtis Robinson, the other. And while it wasn't necessarily the greatest day in terms of he had a pass broken up and he had an interception, I thought Renardo Green took a step forward today simply because he had a number of one-on-one matchups, Sterling, with a legitimate number 1 wide receiver in Chris Olave. Chris Olave, definitely the best receiver in New Orleans. Top 10, top 15 receiver in the NFL. You give him legitimate, consistent quarterback play, and you will see how good he is. He is awesome. Just one of many Ohio State wide receivers who are in the league right now that are incredible. He's one of them. Renardo Green matched up with him consistently, only gave up one decent gain. It was over the middle. He had one pass breakup on the outside. It wasn't the best throw, but he was there and knocked it away. I thought as well, Sterling, Renardo Green had a decent showing. He doesn't have the highlight reel plays that, say, Alex Barrett did with the sack and the strip and the recovery, and Curtis Robinson blowing through the line and getting a tackle for loss. But Renardo Green, solid. I don't think did anything in a negative way that hurts his chances. Obviously, he's making this roster. We know that, but that maybe makes him take a step back in the eyes of this coaching staff. I thought Renardo Green, against a legit number 1 wideout, held his own, and for a rookie, that's pretty impressive.
While, like you said, he didn't have the amazing play, didn't have the fumble recovery or forced fumble, I think when you look at the situations in which he flourished, it kind of changes your mind and say he actually did have a stellar game, or he did have a highlight play. If you wanted to take how the starting offense played and put that in a regular season game, they go 2 drives, they don't do anything. They can't score. Not moving the ball, they're stuck in the mud, which is how this team has played. Go back to the Philadelphia game last year, where they're not doing much. They're they're looking for an answer, someone to pick them up. The Saints have the ball. It's 3rd down, 3rd and 7. You want to get the offense the ball back as soon as you can and get your defense off the field. Great teams get off the field on 3rd down. It's 3rd and 7. Renardo Green locks up the receiver, plays the receiver, not the ball, plays through the whistle, knocks the ball out of his hands, and forces the Saints to have a 3-and-out. That's situational football that helps you win games. Yes, it wasn't a fumble recovery. Yeah, it wasn't a forced fumble or an interception, but it allows your offense to get the ball back in good field territory, good field position. Right, the Saints are at their 30-ish yard line, 34-yard line. The play before you, Jair Brown lights up the ball carrier, Taysom Hill in the backfield, and then you stop him on 3rd and 7. Immediately, in a regular season setting, you give Brock Purdy and Chris McCaffrey and Deebo Samuel and Brandon Ayuk and Kittle and Trent Williams the ball on probably their own 35, 40-yard line.
Yeah.
That's how you win games in the NFL. I thought Green, in the absence of Isaac Yiadom, the assumed opposite starter of Ward and Lenore, he made a statement. Like, this was a game where, hey, if the guy in front of you is not there, go take a spot. I'm not saying he did that, but he definitely helped his cause, and probably being this team's fourth cornerback walking into week 1.
Yeah. Yeah, and then, I mean, you talk about him. We already talked about Dominic Puni, and we talked a lot about Malik Mustafa specifically after game 1. He didn't have the highlight plays that he had a week 1, but he wasn't bad by any stretch either today. We talked a lot about Cowing. Those are all draft picks from this class, and it doesn't include the your first round pick in Ricky Pearsall, who hasn't played yet, but who Shanahan said probably ready and good to go. He's day-to-day now. Maybe we see him preseason game number 3. Talked a little bit about Tatum Bethune, who I know you're a fan of, linebacker, 7th-round pick from Florida State. Jarrett Kingston coming in, playing some offensive line. He was a 6th-round pick. Isaac Guerrero, same boat as Pearsall. Maybe he comes back and he plays preseason week number 3. It's early, of course, but you really don't have a lot of negatives to say about any of these picks so far, other than the guys who haven't played because of injury. That's the only thing up to this point. And again, it's very, very early. We don't know exactly how these players are going to turn out, but you start going down the list and you've got legitimate reasons backed up for a lot of these guys by what you've seen on the field in games, reasons to be excited about. And it's why this draft class has an ability to elevate this roster, not just this year, but be maybe a reason why once Brock Purdy is making $55, $60 million a season, why this roster can continue to be one of the best in the NFL because of draft classes that look like this one does right now, which is a really good one. And that's good news for the 49ers because we spent a lot of time kind of making fun of some of their draft classes in recent memory. They can't afford another one like that. And the early returns on this one, no doubt, are good. All right, we got like 10 minutes left here of overtime on 95.7 in the game. We will get to game balls. But let's hear a little bit more from Kyle Shanahan. One of the bigger stories of this game, Brock Purdy playing without many other offensive starters, played the entire first quarter, 3 drives. He got 12 yards on 11 plays. He finished the day 2 for 6, 11 yards, no turnovers, no interception, no touchdowns either. Kyle Shanahan was asked about Brock Purdy's performance today. Here's what he said.
I mean, there were 2 frustrating drives, just 3 and out. I don't think there was much there when he had it. I had a chance to make a big play on a keeper going back across, but not enough plays. There weren't really any good looks for him either.
Yeah, too small of a sample size, says Kyle Shanahan. What about Shanny? You played him without any offensive starters. What was that about?
Yeah, you always think about that stuff. If we thought it was an issue, we wouldn't have done it. We were good with the guys out there. You know, if Brock wouldn't have gone, probably wouldn't have played Jake. You know, definitely would have had Colton and Jalen go as long, but we felt good with the group.
Felt good with the group, but you got him out there with a couple of starters on the offensive line, Sterling, and that's just about it. It was Cody Schrader who was starting at a running back. One of the things we haven't talked about was Jordan Mason did not play today. He was one of the offensive stars from preseason game number 1. But yeah, I mean, we don't need to look too much into Brock Purdy's stat line in this game or how it looked, because for the most part, he's out there with backups because the offensive line was what? Jalen Moore, Nick Zakel, Jake Brendel, Dominic Puni, and Colton McKivitz. That could turn out to be 3 starters come week 1, Brendel, Puni, and McKivitz. But that left side of the offensive line was doing him no favors, and his pass-catching group wasn't really getting open either. So I think this is more about maybe the others as opposed to Brock Purdy.
Yeah, I mean, if anybody takes away anything negative towards Brock after preseason game week 2, but for him, number 1, when he has none of his weapons out there, just take a hike. Like, just go outside, touch some grass, call it a day.
Take a deep breath.
And it's not like he's a one-year wonder coming in to prove himself again. He's had 2 just phenomenal years back-to-back, and they've gotten better each time. And could you maybe assume regression here or there? It's pretty hard to repeat a top 5 MVP finalist here every single year. But even then, once he gets the full cast of characters around them, you're not going to have Trent Taylor and Cowling and Ronnie Bell and Tay Martin and Cam Latu and Braden Willis.
Yeah.
You're going to have the all-pros around him to elevate the offense. And hopefully give him something to work with because, I mean, you hate to say it. I mean, the Niners offense without those guys, and obviously it'll look this way, looks really bad. Like really bad without their stars.
Yeah.
Shocker.
No doubt. One more from Kyle Shanahan. One of the red flags of this game was the hits that Brock Purdy took. Kyle, were you worried? Did he take too many hits today?
Yeah, I mean, you think about that all the time, but it's also part of football, and I think he protects himself well. If we felt he was in a tough situation, we wouldn't have, but a lot of quarterbacks play throughout the league, and each week's different. I think it helps Brock to play, and last year he didn't get to as much with his arm, but I thought it was good for him to get out there, even though it wasn't 2 great drives. And I know he was really wanting to do it, and hopefully it'll make him in a better position for this when we go to the Raiders.
Yeah, I mean, the bottom line is he did not get hurt despite taking a few hits. He's healthy. Maybe those hits, if you don't get hurt by them, you can pass them off as a good thing. It gets you kind of up and ready for the physicality of regular season football once again. But I know you and I were both a little surprised when he trotted back out for his third drive. What did Brock himself think? Brock, you think he should have stayed on the sideline for drive number 3?
No, I mean, like I said, it's part of the game and stuff. So for me, I'm not out there freaking out about, oh my gosh, I'm not trying to get hit. Like that's not football. If I'm stepping out on the field, then obviously I know what's at stake in terms of it's a physical game. It's fast. Things happen. You're going to get hit. You're going to fall to the ground. So I know that. But at the same time, am I going to do some crazy scrambling and make up some stuff to try to move the ball? So you got to be smart in that sense. So
there we go. And Brock Purdy was smart enough. I mean, he avoided the hits when he could, but I would like him not to take those hits.
He also ran around for a little bit, then threw a ball across his body, almost got picked off, if not for Eric Saubert, and then also got hit in the process. So it's like, yes, Brock, everything you said, correct. Everything you did, doesn't really align with what you said. It probably goes back to just Brock being a baller, wants the ball is snapped. It's just the head turns off. He's like, we're just playing football. Let's go have some fun. But it's like, hey, man, like, we need you for the next 18 weeks. Let's not ruin that week number 2.
Yes, please. We definitely need him to stay healthy. All right, that's all from Kyle Shanahan and Brock Purdy earlier tonight. Takeaways from Brock Purdy, not the best day offensively from him, but it's preseason game number 2. Who cares? He's not out there with any of his weapons offensively. He's playing with a running back that's probably not even going to make the roster. And you've got out there not Deebo Samuel, not George Kittle, not Brandon Ayuk, not even Juwan Jennings. So it's much to do about nothing if anyone out there is worried about Brock Purdy. All right, Sterling, we got about 5 minutes left. We got to do what we always do, hand out game balls. Let's start with one each. One on offense, one on defense. If we've got time and room for more, we can do more. I'll allow you to start. Give us your first game ball. Niners on offense. Who deserves a game ball from today's 16-10 preseason week number 2 win over the New Orleans Saints, Sterling?
I think there's 2 pretty clear answers here. I'm going to hopefully steal yours. I'm going to say Jacob Cowing.
That was one of them, yeah.
Making his NFL debut in the preseason, touched the ball 5 total times, 70 yards as a whole. Almost had a touchdown, had a 19-yard end around for a massive chunk gain, almost 20 yards, doing some Deebo Samuel-like things. Then in the receiving game, 4 receptions on 5 targets, a 38-yard near touchdown pass towards the right sideline, showing the electricity he can bring to an offense. They asked him in the postgame about the end around. He goes, I've been doing that my entire life, and I hope he continues to do that for the San Francisco 49ers this year. So he gets my first game ball of the offensive side.
Yeah, that's a good pick. I was certainly going to pick that one if you didn't. I'll go with the other obvious one. I think you had also highlighted this one. It's Josh Dobbs, who it seems like has a major step up on the QB2 battle right now. He goes 12 for 21. 21 pass attempts in the second quarter alone. That was impressive. 133 passing yards, no touchdowns through the air. Did not turn it over, but did rush for 1 touchdown on a 4th and 1. Read option play, faked the handoff, kept it himself, broke 1 arm tackle, used his offhand to stay upright, and he dove into the end zone for the Niners' only touchdown of the game. Josh Dobbs was very good in that second quarter, and he gets a game ball from me as a result. He led the Niners offensively. That was their best offensive quarter by a mile, and they win the game 16-10. So game balls on offense, Jacob Cowing and Josh Dobbs, both very deserving. Sterling, what about on the defensive side of the football? Who deserves a game ball on defense for the Niners tonight?
On the defense, I think there is a clear-cut, singular answer, and that is Curtis Robinson. He played the Mike linebacker position today, wore the green dot. That is the most important position on defense, and Nick Sorensen trusts him. The box score is not going to blow you away. 4 total tackles, 1 tackle for loss, 1 quarterback hit, and 1 pass deflection. Again, no interceptions, no takeaways, but ultimately playing a clean bill of football. Also, again, early downs in drives when you can get into backfield and you can tackle ball carriers behind the line of scrimmage, giving the opposition 3rd and long, 2nd and long, and keeping your defense in good positions to make plays. That's what Curtis Robinson did all day long. He blew by Chris Olave on one play and got to the ball carrier in the backfield. And it's like, okay, like
it was Taysom Hill in the backfield for a loss of a yard. He absolutely sent him backwards. It was a nice hit.
Like Curtis Robinson, for the lack of name value he may have on this roster that has Fred and Dre and Devondre and other players, Curtis Robinson coming along nicely to kind of secure the back end of that linebacker room up. And today was his best showing so far in 2 or 3 seasons on the roster.
Yeah, I like that pick. That's a good one. I'm going to go with Tatum Bethune, also a linebacker. 7th round pick out of Florida State, led this team in tackles in the preseason. Team leader stats maybe a little bit influenced just by who was playing the most snaps, and he played a ton of snaps, so that's part of the reason. But 9 tackles, had a tackle for loss. He was all around the ball whenever he was in the game, and that's what you want to see from your linebackers. I thought he had a really nice day. I know there's been some positive buzz for him in camp. I think that will pick up after a performance like today. He seems to be a ball hawk. He's around the ball all the time, so he gets the game ball for me on defense. That might be a little bit out of the blue. There's some others. Jalen Graham, I know, had some moments, had a sack in this game, which was good to see. We talked a little bit earlier about Renardo Green, who I thought had a really nice game, matched up against a number 1 receiver in Chris Olave. But I thought Bethune, 7th round pick out of Florida State, not expecting a ton from him this preseason, but through 2 games, Sterling, I've largely been impressed by Bethune and what he's done.
I think he leads the team in tackles in preseason thus far with 18. So he definitely
9 a game. Here we go.
While playing cleanup duty, if you will, in the second half, when you're around the ball that much and you're making tackles, you're either Blake Martinez and you're a tackle vulture and not actually that good. Shout out Green Bay and New York Giants, Pokemon trader card guy. But also, you're in the right place at the right time a lot. That feels like that is Bethune more than being Blake Martinez 2.0.
Yes. No doubt. I agree with you there. Shout outs for the offensive side. I came down his road a little bit preseason week number 1. Matt Breida had himself a decent day. Actually, some chunks on the ground and through the air. Caught 2 passes for 25 yards, including 1 for 21, 24 yards on the ground on 7 carries at a 12-yard rush. Matt Breida deserves a shout overall. Cam Latu actually caught 3 passes. Good for him.
Stop it.
He also put the ball on the ground once, which was not good. But he did catch 3, which is an improvement.
He's so bad. He's so bad.
This is supposed to be a positive segment, but I absolutely ruined it. That's all my fault, and I apologize.
Talk about Braden Willis. He was much better. Much better.
Yeah, he didn't drop any. He had 3 targets and 3 catches. Way to go.
There you go.
Braden
Played
Willis.
a good enough backup fullback today. Didn't get blown up by a defender. Good stuff.
Way to
Good
go.
stuff.
Way to go. Yeah. Shout outs for all the backup tight ends. Shout out to Eric Saubert as well, who's probably going to win the tight end 2 job.
Jake Tungus.
He had a nice catch. He had 3 catches, actually. So, yeah. Backup tight end. It's a tough battle right now on this 49er roster. All right, Sterling, that's all we got time for tonight. A pleasure, as always, being with you. A little bit of programming news. We will not have overtime for you after preseason game number 3 on Friday of this weekend, but we'll be back for Monday Night Football. Niners and Aaron Rodgers and the Jets. That's going to be fun. We will be with you after that game on Monday night. Sterling, until then, it's been fun. I'm looking forward to Monday night against the Jets. And until then, I guess we'll talk later, all right?
I can't wait, man. Week 1 of the NFL season cannot come soon enough.
Yes.
Football is back. I want to hit something. It's back.
Maybe by the time we talk next, Trent Williams and Brandon Ayuk will be playing football. Fingers crossed. I certainly
They
hope
got
so.
2 weeks. Figure it out, John. Figure it out, Kyle.
Figure it out. All right, that's Sterling Bennett. My name is Mark Randy signing off for Ken Luttrell behind the glass, making us sound good all night long. We appreciate his work. To all you guys for tuning in, we appreciate it as well. We'll catch up with you post-game Monday Night Football, week number 1, when overtime does return. Until then, it's Mark Randy signing off. Have a good night.
For all contest rules, go to 957thegame.com/rules.
Hey everyone, it's Ted from Consumer Cellular, the guy in the orange sweater, and this is your wake-up call. If you're paying too much for wireless service, you don't have to keep having that nightmare. Consumer Cellular